I thought we agreed to put that jungle business behind us. It was mating season. How could I have known she was your sister?
This game is incredible. Wait, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Ratchet 1 was a pretty solid game that laid a great groundwork for the series despite its awkward start. Going Commando was a dramatically better game. However, now I can look back at some of the flaws it has, likely due to being rushed given the 1-year development. Still a fantastic game, but definitely not flawless. So where do they take it from here? A problem a lot of third games of a trilogy face, especially 3D platformers, is that almost every time it has tons of variety purely for the sake of it. Whether it be a bunch of new gameplay styles, brand new characters or vehicles, all in an attempt to spice things up, or them running out of ideas to keep things fresh, almost every third game of a 3D platformer trilogy falls victim to this. Even Insomniac is guilty of this with Spyro. Don't get me wrong, some games can still handle this really well and deliver an experience that's still on par and sometimes even better than the previous games, but more times than not, it often leads the third game to feeling less focused or lesser quality than the second or even first. So yet again, Insomniac releases a sequel 1 year later in 2004. You know what? No more beating around the bush. If I used to consider Going Commando a perfect sequel, Up Your Arsenal was the perfect threequel. I grew up on Ratchet and Clank. It is one of the biggest parts of my childhood. Even though I wasn't a fan of the first game, Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal undeniably left a huge impact on me. I always considered them basically equal in my eyes. However, even back then, it was clear which game I always preferred. Up Your Arsenal has always been one of my favorite games of all time ever since I even first started playing video games. Funnily enough, my mom is actually the one who got me into video games as a child. I used to love watching her play them, and Ratchet and Clank was one of her favorite series. So after what happened when I revisited Going Commando for the review, let's just say it had me worried that Up Your Arsenal might be a similar situation. Am I blinded by nostalgia? Does this game still hold up? What do you think? Alright, the only way to see where Up Your Arsenal stands is to just get into it. Let's begin. The game kicks off directly after the last game, with Ratchet and Clank enjoying those Megacorp employment checks in Megapolis, until they receive word that the Solana Galaxy and their home planet is under attack from a new villain known as Dr. Nefarious. Once they return home to fend off the invaders, the President tasks them to join the Galactic Rangers and track down Captain Quark, who's supposedly the only one who's ever beaten Nefarious. Except, Quark kinda lost his mind. You know what? I love the setup this time. It's simple, concise, and focused, unlike the mess that was Going Commando. Obviously, there is more to it than that, but the main focus of the story is stopping Dr. Nefarious from eliminating all organic life and trying not to point a rocket at Captain Quark's face.
I couldn't have done it without these massive guns! Mwah! Mwah!
I like it. Simple, and a solid premise for a platformer so it can focus on humor and characters. So let's go ahead and address the obvious. The game's humor. Ratchet and Clank has been known for its slight edge and cynicism, but Up Your Arsenal is the epitome of the risky humor the series is famous for. If the suggestive title wasn't enough to tip you off as to what you're in for, Insomniac looked at the ratings board and said, "Censors? What's a censor?" and then proceeded to shove it up their arsenal.
My daughter tells me you're a man who's good with his hands, Ratchet.
Sir, I swear I never...
He was buck naked, screaming and holding a banana. Or maybe it weren't a banana. It could be.
What a load of bullshit.
They got away with so much stuff in this game, it's actually incredible. Even ignoring all the suggestive sides, the writing is still fantastic. The writing in this game is so good, dude. It is easily the best yet, with some of the funniest moments in the series so far. I mean, granted, not everything lands, and since the game is extremely satirical, there's quite a few parodies in it reflecting spy films, celebrities, and political figures, which does in a sense make it a slight product of its time, but frankly I think it just adds to its charm. And man, this game is oozing with charm and character. This is the most character-driven game in the series yet. There's tons of brand new characters, brand new minor characters, and even some returning ones. Well, honestly, the characters returning from the first game felt like they were added purely for fan service and nothing more than to make the Q-Force as incompetent as possible. And there were a couple of side villains I felt weren't too necessary, especially Clunk. But the rest? Pretty much fantastic. Ratchet and Clank are just as great as they were in the last game, and Captain Quark is simultaneously way more likable and hateable this time. He's no longer an anti-hero who does twisted things to get his attention in the eye of the public like in the other games. But he's still just as egotistical, selfish, and very cowardice, and the game does everything in its power to make you hate his guts because he gets put in charge of everything and steals all the credit for everything you do. But at the same time, he's also freaking hilarious. And let's talk about Dr. Nefarious. Dr. Nefarious is without a doubt one of the greatest villains ever created. His amazing design and his menacing nature but extreme hamminess and slight incompetency, combined with the amazing writing and literal perfect voice casting and performance by Armin Shimmerman, makes him not just the best Ratchet and Clank character, but easily the best villain in any platformer period. He steals every single scene he's in, and basically every line is pure gold.
Too long have we robots suffered under the bigotry, the stupidity, the squishiness and foul stench of organic life forms.
That's what makes it so good, Janice. Feel it. My heart is pounding like an anvil.
Oh, this is the best part of my day.
Lawrence! Lawrence? Lawrence!
How can I be of assistance?
Annihilate him!
Just kidding.
And he only gets better from here, but that's for another time. So we start the game and... yeah, this is definitely Ratchet and Clank. What did you expect? It plays basically identically to Going Commando, except with a new arsenal, new gadgets, and of course further quality of life changes and a few new mechanics. Going Commando basically established the groundwork for the perfect Ratchet and Clank game already, but needed a few of the bad parts ironed out. And that's exactly what Up Your Arsenal delivers on. Okay, you know what? From now on I'm just going to refer to the game as Ouya, because it's easier to say, and it's funnier. So Ouya added further quality of life changes to an already fantastic system. You actually start the game with Clank this time, allowing you to long jump from the start. A second weapon wheel was added, allowing you to access double the amount of weapons by simply holding R1 while bringing it up. Not only great for an even larger arsenal of weapons to have on hand, but you waste so much less slots for gadgets now. Plus you can now purchase all ammo you need at once. Thank you! And the slingshot will auto-equip every time you need to activate it. They really fixed all the little things. But hey, now that we've established that Ratchet still controls basically perfectly, let's talk about what you're really here for. The combat. The weapon upgrading system got a major overhaul. In the last game, a weapon would level up once and change into a new version, excluding mega weapons of course. But now in Ouya, weapons slowly upgrade by multiple levels, unlocking all kinds of upgrades and mods until it reaches the point where it reaches the next level. Various effects related to that weapon, extra damage, more ammo, lock-on mods, you name it. And it also makes it feel way less time consuming, because let's be real, some of the weapons in the last game feel like that took 20 years to upgrade. And the arsenal. Holy crap, the arsenal. I'm just gonna say it, this is not just the best arsenal in not only the original trilogy, but in the entire series as a whole. It is uncontested. Almost every single weapon is insanely destructive, extremely creative, and an utter blast to use. This is easily the best combat system ever implemented into a 3D platformer. It's amazing. Oh, and if you were to try to argue this statement, let me retort you with basically every single weapon in the game. The shock cannon, which is an utterly devastating shotgun that can obliterate anything that breathes. The N60 Hurricane, the last good blaster before they all started sucking. The Plasma Whip, which is just the wrench but better. The Annihilator, my personal favorite rocket launcher. Literally every weapon except the Infector and Holoshield launcher. And of course, the Rift Inducer. Easily my second favorite weapon in the entire series. This baby's so overpowered it's insane. It's literally just a black hole gun and fires as many of these as you want out there, and literally everything that isn't a dropship or boss will be pulled into its void. And those are just some of the new ones! There's even some returning weapons from the first game like the popular Suck Cannon and Agents of Doom. And to anyone who may try to argue that Going Commando has a better arsenal, here's my counter-argument. Literally all the best weapons from Going Commando are in this game except for the Seeker gun. And all of them are even better than they were before. Yes, on top of all the amazing new weapons, you have the Bouncer, which speaks for itself, the Plasma Storm, which is even deadlier now, the Shield Charger, the Mini Turret Glove, and the Lava Gun, and the upgrade doesn't completely ruin it this time. And better yet, if you bought them in the last game, you get them completely for free in Ouya, which was also the case for the last game and weapons from the first, but those sucked, so who cares. And then there's the Rye 3-No. Rip ya 3 new ones. Easily the top contender for my favorite weapon in the entire series. Why, you may ask? Strangely, it's the only Rhino to completely change as it upgrades. Its V4 form is arguably its best version, which just shoots multiple beams that vaporizes everything in front of it. But the Rhinocerator? Hoo boy! There is nothing more satisfying than turning everything that moves into dust in the blink of an eye. I'm telling you, it has never been more fun shooting things in the face, and the level design complements this beautifully. The level design is very combat focused, but yet it strikes the perfect balance of combat and platforming. Easily some of the best level design in the trilogy, while also incorporating some of the most unique and memorable planets. Ouya also spiced things up by adding missions to certain planets. Pretty self-explanatory. Designated areas where you either need to deal with oncoming waves of enemies, infiltrate enemy bases, or other tasks. And you know what? These are a nice change of pace. It might include a flying ship mission or two, which are better than any of the flying missions in the previous games. But this is a good way to add variety to the game without stuff like, you know, this. And I have to give some love to the Starship Phoenix specifically. It's not technically a hub, but it very much feels like one. It's pretty minimal and honestly kind of basic, but I love that there's a home base you can always return to, and it's a shame that no other games try to expand upon the concept of a central hub. Plus the music is way too good and unbelievably nostalgic. Actually, the entire soundtrack is straight up amazing. The soundtracks of the first two games aren't as impactful and nowhere near as memorable along the length of other platforming juggernauts such as Mario, Sonic, and Crash, but they were still really good. Up Your Arsenal, on the other hand, yeah, the soundtrack is absolutely incredible. Absolutely the best soundtrack in the series overall, and no game after comes anywhere close to the sheer volume or quality of these songs. David Bergard, whose name I'm still sure I'm messing up, you did an outstanding job. Just listen to some of these. The bosses themselves are actually really good this time. Definitely the best lineup of bosses yet. Not that the competition is stiff. This series certainly isn't known for its boss fights, that's for sure. They range from barely a boss, bullet sponge, pathetic, agony, pitiful, and I will stab someone if that thing remains on my screen any longer. The ones in Ouya are not all some of the best you will see in a platformer or anything, but most are pretty good, and even the worst ones are decent, and pretty much all of them have amazing music. And Dr. Nefarious is just one of the best bosses in the whole series. He's fast, chaotic, aggressive, and challenging without being too unfair or going down way too easily. And the music is so good. best final boss of the trilogy and debatably the best in general. But there's steep competition later. Still at least top 2. Now remember earlier when I talked about platforming threequels and how basically every one of them fall under the trap of adding so much variety and different gameplay styles in an attempt to spice things up? Well, Ouya is one of the only threequels out there that doesn't fall under this at all. Sure, there is variety within the game, but no more than what the other games have. In fact, I'd argue it's even less so than the other games. Ouya of all games so far probably focuses the most on platforming and combat. The only things new added you can actually classify as variety would be the assault missions, the halo jumping, and the hover ship, and that's practically it, and I would barely call it that too. The Clank levels are actually the most tolerable yet, legitimately. They aren't that bad this time. Clank moves so much faster and just feels much better. And the gadgets? Well, I'm just gonna be honest, probably the weakest selection of new gadgets yet. The staples still return from the previous games just as great as ever, but the new ones, meh. The reflector is the most interesting one, and it's just alright. You reflect lasers into switches. It works fine. The tier guys I am not a big fan of for the button timing minigames, but as disguises go, it's been worse. One of the gadgets is literally used twice in the whole game, but the hacker is definitely my least favorite lock puzzle in the series. It's just not very interesting or puzzling. You spin a cylinder around and shoot red things and pick up green ones, but they drag on so long. Basically all of them have multiple levels. Literally all they had to do was make each lock one level and boom, it's tolerable. So yeah, technically the weakest game in terms of new gadgets. But I don't really care, to be honest. I've never been crazy for the situational gadgets in general, and the fact that Ouya hardly focuses on them is just not that big of a deal. The only thing that bothers me is the hacker, and that's just an annoyance rather than an actual flaw. However, let's address the green spandex wearing elephant in the room, the Quark Vid Comics. This is definitely the most variety for the sake of it thing added to the game. It's just 5 simplistic 2D platforming minigames starring everyone's least favorite hero. They're alright and would be fine as an optional minigame. The only problem is they aren't optional and all 5 are mandatory. In fact, they literally progress the story 3 times, which is kind of dumb. They really should have been completely optional. Definitely the weakest aspect of Ouya, and that's saying something to the game's quality because 1, again, they're still decent, 2, you can completely skip them in New Game Plus, and 3, they're completely worth it just to watch the cutscenes alone because they are glorious.
No previous adventure could have prepared Quark for his encounter with the dread pirate Blackstar and his crew of... Oh, please tell me this is a typo.
That's robotic pirate ghosts.
I mean, I've worked on some real junk, but this one takes the cake. Pirate, ghost, robots. What do they think, we're idiots? The exciting, all-true, right, adventures of Captain Quark.
I'll use the cheat codes. Let's see. Up, up, down, down, left, right, circle, square, square. Even a tutu!
I can't tell if this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, or the worst. Yes. So I used to view Going Commando as a perfect sequel, but upon revisiting it for the marathon, I had to come to grips and acknowledge some of the flaws it did have. But up your arsenal. The Quark Vid Comics are mandatory, which is dumb, but you can skip them in New Game Plus anyway. The lock puzzle isn't that great and goes on way too long, but yet that could also be easily fixed by reducing how many times you have to do it. The tier guys is annoying but brief. Al's lying, that's not a video game, that's barely even a computer screen. That's just lazy. Yeah, I'm completely grasping at straws here. I genuinely cannot find any actual problems with Up Your Arsenal outside of some extremely minor nitpicks. This game holds up so well. This is the best controlling Ratchet game yet, with not only the best arsenal in the entire series, but some of the best combat in any 3D platformer. The writing is incredible alongside great side characters, Dr. Nefarious, a good story, great level design, the best boss fights in the trilogy, the best soundtrack in the series as a whole, a perfect difficulty increase that gradually gets harder and not the random difficulty spikes of the last game, the Infernox armor, the Rhythrino, the Rhinocerator, a double-bladed lightsaber. This This game is fantastic! Up Your Arsenal holds up so unbelievably well. It took everything Going Commando did right and made everything even better, making this not just one of the best PS2 games and 3D platformers ever made, but without question the best Ratchet game in the trilogy. Up Your Arsenal is absolutely amazing. Now, I have a compulsive need to rank things, so let me introduce you to the patented 3D platformers ranking list. And as you can see, when I say Up Your Arsenal is one of the best 3D platformers ever, I mean it. Now your average gamer would end things there because people seem to only remember the original trilogy for some reason. Newsflash, we're only getting started, and next time I'll be taking a look at Ratchet Deadlocked. I'm really looking forward to that one. I have a ton of material to pull from that game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We'll see.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun.